Welcome to Hometown. I'm Daniel Austin. Today we're coming to you from our home, WJCT Studios in downtown Jacksonville, from the floor of the iconic Studio A. For the past 35 years, this enormous soundstage has served as the production facility for several theatrical filmmaking and television productions, as well as the venue for countless community events. Today we have a special episode in store for you. After over a decade with WJCT, we're saying farewell to our senior producer and the creator of Hometown, Stephen Jones. To celebrate his work that has put a spotlight on so much good in this community, we're going to take a look at some of his favorite highlights from Hometown over the years.
When I was a kid, I really enjoyed watching movies, and I remember seeing E.T. for the first time, and I was captivated by how the combination of images and sound and music could elicit an emotion, how it could make you feel happiness or sadness. And I think that was the first time I really thought about wanting to become a storyteller. And when my parents bought me my first video camera when I turned 14, I took that outside, shot short films with my sister, and then when I got into high school, I started documenting my life with my friends. And I think the more that I shot, the more that I fell in love with the whole process. Hometown was created by Karen Fagans and myself, and it was based off of a show that WJCT used to produce called Picture This, which was produced by a former producer, John Ossoff. And the idea was to tell stories about the people and the places and the events here in Northeast Florida. When the show started, we didn't have a host. And somewhere around the middle of season 4, Daniel Austin came on to be our host. And he really brought his love for our community and his personality to the show. And I think that the show's been better for it.
For Hometown, I'm Daniel Austin, and we'll see you next time!
My favorite type of story is a story that makes you feel something. And there's a group of retirees that live in Penny Retirement Community down in Penny Farms, Florida. And they spend a lot of their free time working in a building in the back of the property. And they build these things called PETs, which stands for Personal Energy Transportation. And they build these things and they send them out all over the world. And it was such a great opportunity to meet them and work with them and tell their story, because you could really see that they believe so much in what they do.
A PET is a three-wheeled vehicle made for rough terrain and for city use, powered by a crank at hand level, so they simply turn the crank and a chain engages the sprocket on the front wheel and they're able to move about. It has a wooden box on it that gives them an opportunity to carry cargo. They can haul 5-gallon cans of water or farm products or other things. That's important to them. Helping people escape the prison of immobility, to me, is a strong appeal, giving them that ability to get around, to go, to see, and to be involved gainfully in the world.
I don't know whether Larry told you the first story I ever heard from him. One day when he was testing soils, when a woman came crawling out of the weeds, dragging her body and has a baby tied to her back and 2 little children. And then he said, well, where are you going? And she said, well, that next village, I hear there's something I can ride. And he had brought the prototypes, he outfitted her, and then she went back. But now use your imagination. She left that morning, banking her life on getting something, and in the evening she comes back riding her little vehicle, and she has a little baby in front and 2 little children standing in the cargo part in the back. And she rides into the village with dignity. She looks at you eye to eye, like we do now. The whole village comes out and says, what a miracle. You know, this woman who crawled with her family now can get around, and that just completely not changes one life, it changes a family life, it changes a village life.
When I'm editing a story, I'm always trying to find a soundbite or something that I can use to entice the viewer to want to keep watching the story. And I usually try and put that at the beginning. And With Hope's Closet, the story that we did on Hope's Closet, Corey, the manager, starts off the story talking about a woman who walked into Hope's Closet shortly after they opened.
I was at the register ringing out a customer, and this lady bolts in the door, the front of the store, and she just beelines for me, and she's like, I just saw the word hope. I need help. And that's when I realized God's using this in a bigger way than what I imagined. And so a lot of times people just need an ear to listen, and we hear that every week. And so we're just able to connect with them on a personal level and use this retail space as a means to do ministry. We opened our doors in August of 2015, but the story doesn't start there. We're an outreach ministry at the Church of 1122. We wanted to, as a church, to help transform communities. And what did that look like? What could we do to bring a presence into the community that would bring hope and love? We envisioned a place where people felt valued and loved. Why not make this retail space like you would if you were walking into a regular mall or a store? And so we really focus on the customer experience and make them feel valued, whether they have no money in their pocket or they have $1 million.
To me, some of the best narratives are always people's real lives, especially stories about change or transformation. And one of my favorite stories about change or transformation came later in the Hope's Closet story when we met Matthew Clark.
I met Matthew. He applied for our jobs program, our first piloted program last year. What I remembered in that interview was a gentleman who had been through a lot. And you could tell that the weight of the world was wearing him down. I saw opportunity in someone who, if he was given a chance, could possibly do a lot with his life.
I was always kind of like a rebel, because I'm on the outside looking in, so I'm thinking the world owes me something. So I went on a bad decision spree, let's say that. And that turned into like 20 years. I was in a closed cycle. You go to this point, why is it this way? Go to that point, why is it this way? And you just keep going around and around and around, and the years just click off. You start when you're 30, and then you end up when you're 55. You're looking in the mirror and you're seeing the same face, it's just older, but you're doing the same things. And just change that. They've turned me into, from a taker to a helper, which is awesome. The program has made me more of a people person, because when I came here, this was unnatural to me. These people run around here smiling, everybody's happy, I was like, this is not natural. This is not the way the world's supposed to be. Everybody's supposed to just be competition and, but it's not that way here. And over that 6-month period, I learned a lot about people, and that basically people are good. There's evil in the world, of course there is, but basically people are good and they will help you. If you help them, if you show them kindness, they'll show you kindness back. I don't care who you are. I come here to serve because these are my friends now. I'll be coming in the doorway, there's people standing in the line. They come in here frequently. Hello, Matthew. They even know me by first name, but I'm just rolling by, I'm just thinking to myself, this is unbelievable. It's such a different, it's a paradigm shift like crazy.
In addition to all of the great groups and organizations that are in the Northeast Florida area, there's also a lot of artists here. And one of the more unique artists that I had the opportunity to meet was Hiromi Moneyhun. And Hiromi is a paper cut artist, and her story and her artwork are just really incredible.
Very time-consuming art. I love using my hand and my brain and not computer or laser cutting machine. It looks easy maybe, but physically painful, but also meditation to me. Most people said, never seen this art like a paper cut before. I see many people just kind of walk back and kind of look closer to my piece, and then realize, oh, this is something, not drawing on a wall. People say, how many papers do you use? And I said, just one paper. And yeah, and a few people just don't believe me. Jacksonville local artist saw my work. Immediately she made contact with Theater Players by the Sea, and I had group show there, and that was the very first show in my life. And after that show, I guess I'm really lucky. Just next show leads to next show, and just until now, I guess I'm full-time artist, and it's like a dream. I wanted to be artist, and showing my art in gallery or museum, and that's like an artist dream. Hopefully, near future goal is gonna be showing my paper cut in my hometown in Japan. I just keep making my paper cut, and if I have chance to show wherever in the world, that would be great.
One of the most memorable stories about an artist that I had the opportunity to tell was the story of Johnny Dale. And Johnny suffered a brain injury when he was 4, and as a result he has what's called Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. And so he has a hard time communicating. And so he took up painting as a way to communicate with the world. And when he finishes a painting, he tells his mom the story behind the painting.
When John tells me a story, I'm just amazed. Some of them are very whimsical, some of them break my heart. And then you realize that inside, there's this person with this beautiful mind who has his own imagination and his own thoughts, and they're imaginative and creative, and they're beautiful. When John started painting his own pictures, we started with small canvas boards, then we moved to larger canvas boards, and we got him his first canvas, and he hadn't painted on it. And we are big sci-fi people in our house. And we were watching Lost in Space again. And John, we get to the end of the thing, and the credits are showing, and all of a sudden John runs and he grabs his brand new canvas, and he declares, "Dog in space!" And he painted, and he drew it and painted a dog in space. This one looked, he drew a house, and it looked like a house on a hill, and it was like, okay. And then he starts painting, and he uses black and green, and the water's really foreboding. And then he starts painting the house, and it's not a house, it's a shack. And I asked him, I said, "John, what is it a picture of?" And he said, "It's my house where you and I live, but nothing is scary if you trust in God." We got a little bit larger canvas, and John starts painting, and usually he draws things first, but he doesn't. He just starts painting, and it's really brilliant, and he's mixing colors. And when he finally gets to the end, I asked him, I said, "John, what's it a picture of?" And he looked up at me, and his eyes were full of tears, and he said, "Going home." That's me flying home with an angel to Jesus' house. And it's beautiful and it's sad, because a little 13-year-old boy at the time shouldn't think about going home. John's art is possibilities. It makes him connect to other people in a way he couldn't do before. And because he can paint it on a canvas, then he can say it with words. Because it's not that the words aren't there, it's that he can't find them. But when he can see them, he knows what he wants to say. And after he can see them, then he can speak them.
If I had to choose my favorite story that I've ever produced for Hometown, it would be the story of Cliff Leonard. I remember I was looking for a story about an artist, and I was doing some research, and I came across an article on Mr. Leonard and found out that he was a sculptor. And after meeting with him, I found out that he had served in the Marine Corps and was a veteran of the Vietnam War. He knew a lot of people that didn't come back, and he wanted to keep their memory alive. And so he set out to sculpt busts of all of the fallen service members in the Northeast Florida area, specifically the fallen Marines. The interesting thing is that he had no artistic background prior to sculpting the busts of these Marines. Mr. Leonard came to WJCT and we did the interview here in this studio. And I still remember that interview very vividly. It was a very emotional interview. And there's still one clip that sticks with me today. And it's the clip where Mr. Leonard talks about presenting these busts to the families of the fallen.
When I first started sculpting these young men, it was very difficult. Emotionally, making the thing is difficult, and then presenting it to the family is by far the most difficult. The last piece was very difficult. It was a spouse. She came by about 2 weeks ago. And she was very upset. I was upset. My wife was upset. And her daughter, 15-year-old daughter, was probably the calmest of us all. I had inscribed some of the things on the back. I'd written her and asked her to tell me some of the things about John. And she wrote me several small little paragraphs. And I took some of those and wrote it on the back of the piece. And when I turned the piece around, she became even more upset. Not from anything I'd written, but she just quietly crying said, I didn't think I'd ever see the back of his head again. And you know, what do you say? What can you say to someone?
There was a story about a stay-at-home dads group that was sent to us, and initially I wasn't sure if it was going to be a good fit for the show, but I went and met with David McPhee, who was a member of the stay-at-home dads group, and I talked with him, and I realized that he had a really compelling story about his life as a stay-at-home dad.
I've always had a passion for the environment. I've always had a passion for hiking, and that translated to what I wanted to do for a career. My passion from the environment, I think like everybody else, they trace it back to when they were a child.
There's that Brazilian pepper they noted, Gary.
When I was 9 years old, I joined the Boys Brigade, and we went on hiking trips. And there's nothing like waking up in the morning and hearing the crows crowing and the sun coming through the trees. That's amazing, and that's where I get it from. And I took on environmental science, and I went to school at Edith Cowan University in Western Australia. My second passion was how you can take tools like GIS and computers and then use that to manage the environment. So I went on to do a master's in geography at the University of Arkansas. When I eventually stopped working in the Everglades, I went back to Australia for my mother. My mother was actually terminally ill. and I came back to America after she died. You get a different perspective of life after a death. My wife and I have been trying to have a child for years. My wife just says to me, we've never been successful up to now, something's wrong. Let's put everything else on hold, let's make this a priority. And that's exactly what we did.
Taking all this film for you so that you know how much we love you.
My wife said to me, my career's established, I want to have a child, we'll figure the rest of it out. So I knew my wife had to work and I knew I had to stay home. The approach to a child is dramatically different from what it is in your mind's eye. Absolutely, there is a romance and a reality. There is a romance that says everything is going to go perfect. You are going to be able to sit down and plan your spreadsheets and everything will be absolutely as you imagine it to be.
Oh, it's a baby, we're down.
And then there's the reality. It's almost like complete chaos, and you can't plan for that. And the scientist in you just completely freaks out. But you hold it together and you strive and you go forward. The one thing that you certainly notice when you're staying at home all day as well, and you first start realizing that you have to get out, and you start to look for things that you can take your daughter to. But the world isn't set up for stay-at-home dads. Mommy and me, mommy's groups, and you look at those and you think, well, will I fit in? And I realized very early on in my daughter's development, just going to the local beaches and the local pools, that when my daughter wanted to play with another child, who more often than not was attached to a mum, the mum very much wanted to keep an arm's length from the dad. Because they were concerned, was I trying to make advances towards them or something like that? Obviously I wasn't. But there's still that position in society where people get a little bit nervous of the strange guy, stranger danger almost from the mom's perspective.
On behalf of myself and all of the producers who have worked on Hometown, we want to say thank you for watching Hometown for the past 6 years and for giving us the opportunity to tell these wonderful stories about our community. Thank you and good night.
For this and other episodes of Hometown, visit wjct.org/hometown. Or you can download our WJCT mobile app and take Hometown and other great WJCT programming with you wherever you go.